Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. So we started this podcast for pre-coiners that don't know anything about Bitcoin at all. If you want to chat about sats with us, head to satchats.com to grab your seat today. I'm your host, Stuart Bitcoin Maxi, who wears prescription sunglasses to protect you and your loved ones from my massive orange Bitcoin laser eyes.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus, Bitcoin smash buyer and proud multi-coiner.
That's right. So before we get started, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe. Smash it the same way Chris smash buys Bitcoin so that we can get to 1,000 subscribers as quickly as possible, unlike a live show for you all. So today, we're actually going to be hearing Myles' Bitcoin story, which we think is going to be absolutely massive. We were very excited for him to come on the show when we saw his form submission. I think we're going to be in for a ride. So Myles, for the Satillionaires out there in the chat, first of all, on behalf of all of us, thank you for joining us here today. Help us get to know a little bit about you and what you do, and what your relationship with money has been. Like, who is Myles?
Who is Myles? I ask that question every day, and I still haven't got an answer to it. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. I'm Myles Wakem. I'm currently sitting in Scottsdale, Arizona, en route to Mexico. So all the stuff around me, behind me, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a crazy mess here because we're packing a truck to take everything. But having said that, let me tell you about my Bitcoin experience. I'm I guess you call it a retired, I don't know if that's the right word, but excommunicated technologist that decided to jump ship maybe 10 years ago and go back to my roots. I'm a recording engineer by trade, but I'm also a musician, but I'm also a guy who went to TAG and supported his first computer and made out of that. That was my day job. Through that whole experience, and I'm from Australia, if you can't get that. So anyway, I moved to the United States when I was 25, played the software game and tried to make a go with the whole. It lasted about 10 years before Napster took it all away. But after that happened, I guess I became a bit of a learned person economically about how the dangers of boom and bust cycles in economies go, because I was victim to them on numerous occasions. And that led me down the rabbit hole trying to understand how money worked. I found myself in Venice, Italy, visiting a town square where the first investment bank was ever created, all the way through to understanding money, and then watching most of my money go down the drain in the 2008 housing collapse here in Arizona. Which pretty bad taste in my mouth, because at that point I'd been working for decades trying to earn a crust, trying to earn a living and pay for my family and all of that. I only to watch these gangsters sort of just figure it away like it didn't mean anything, which clearly was a problem. And so, using my technical skills and my, I guess, stubborn hacker-like mentality, I decided to go down the rabbit hole of cryptography and sort of started hanging out with a bunch of guys called cypherpunks, and starting to understand a little bit about the concept of not necessarily using the banking system to handle transactions. This was around, post 2008, so before Bitcoin white paper came out. This is prior to that. I'd also been employing a guy who was a really good software developer, working with me on some projects, who was in Bangladesh. And if you go back in time to 2001, when the 9/11 whole thing went down, post 9/11, the American culture and society, and certainly government, were very anti-Muslim. There was no way that anybody who was Muslim was going to get into the country for a start, let alone be treated very well on the world stage. And my guy in Bangladesh was Muslim, a great software developer, and I needed to pay it. So the PayPal system was not available to him. The international banking system had shut down that entire country. So I had to schlep down to my supermarket and go to a Western Union and get a MoneyGram every week or so to send what was pathetic amounts of money, because, I mean, his economy, the currency transactions, like $50 were $500 to him. So I'd go down there and buy like a $50 MoneyGram. It would cost me $50 to get it. Then I'd send it to him, and about 30% of it was just gone by fees and all this sort of stuff before he even saw it. And I'm like, dude, you're living in abject poverty. I'm the rich guy here. Why is it that I can't get you money? That's the backstory. Then through the cyberpunk movement, a friend of mine had hooked me up with a number of people in that world, one of which was a gentleman by the name of Julian Assange, a fellow Australian, a guy who I'd actually met, not realizing it, maybe 20 years prior. But I started understanding what he was doing with WikiLeaks, and I was kind of okay with that. I was like, this is cool. You're unveiling all these, things that I'm seeing up close and personal. How do I keep your service going? So I thought, well, I've sent him some money, right? So at this time, he all of a sudden, all of his avenues for getting money was being shut down, from the Bank of America to PayPal and Western Union. And I'm like, funny, that's the same experience my buddy in Bangladesh has got it. And I have to schlep every week and send him money. This is ridiculous. So in the process, Julian Assange posts on his WikiLeaks forum, we're starting to take this thing called Bitcoin. And I'm like, oh, yeah? So tell me about it. So I'm looking into this, and, I'm asking other friends of mine in the cyberpunk movement about this thing, and they're like, yeah, this thing's got legs. It's pretty cool. I'm like, okay. Let me get into this technically and try and mine some Bitcoin. So I started doing that, and that kind of worked. And then I just happened to be in conversation with my buddy in Bangladesh. I'm like, this pay you've been getting old real fast. Is there another way you can do it? And surprisingly, he says to me, why don't you send me Bitcoin? I'm like, oh, okay. So this is around about 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. How do I get Bitcoin? So I'm like, Google it. And I said, well, I can mine it, but I can't mine enough. But back in those days, one Bitcoin was worth like $1, maybe $2. By the time it started getting some traction, it started to be worth a lot more. I remember when I first started buying it, I was paying a whopping $7 a Bitcoin, which is nuts. But there was this exchange in Japan called NT-GOX, which was used for doing like virtual trading cards and video game routes, and you could use it as a kind of a proxy between virtual goods and physical goods, and they would sell Bitcoin. So the problem was I had to wire money, and back in those days, my wiring fees were going to be like $75. So if I was going to wire money, I was going to wire a fair amount because I wanted to buy some of the stuff, so I could pay my guy in Bangladesh, maybe send a bit over to Julian and so on. So I did, and I don't know how much it was, quite, but it's $7 a Bitcoin. It wasn't really a big deal. And then all of a sudden, I watched it go from $7 to $1,200, and I'm like, oh my god, I ain't paying anybody with this thing. It's worth too much. Surprisingly, it then NT-GOX got hacked. But the weird thing was, and this is just total luck, but my dude in Bangladesh is saying, it's great now I've got Bitcoin, but I'm having a hard time converting it to my local currency. But there's this thing that had popped up out of Hong Kong. It was another exchange that had a deal with MasterCard, and they were able to make it so that you could, if you transferred your Bitcoin to their exchange, they would allow you to withdraw with a regular MasterCard, like a debit card. And so I said, well, let's give this a try. So he got one. I opened an account and moved all my Bitcoin out of empty box to these guys just before the empty box went down. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm glad that happened. And then he went to his local ATM in Dhaka and was able to withdraw his local currency for like very much no real fees. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is huge. If we can, and then all of a sudden the light bulb's going off. Like, this isn't just about money. This is about freedom. This is about how a guy in a foreign country living in abject poverty can get my money without any friction instantly and can convert it to his local currency. I mean, there's 8 billion people out there on the planet. This thing's going to be huge. So I started buying more and more and more. And I'm like, this is going to be massive. And then, years go by. I start telling friends about it. They'll think I'm a freaking idiot. They'll think, oh, you're buying that nerd money. That's going to go to zero. That's worthless. I'm like, but you don't understand. I can pay these guys, without the bank. Look what the bank just did to us. They devalued my house to like 30% of its value because they're a bunch of crooks. You won't put them in jail, but you're going to hurt my guy who just wants to earn an honest living, and I'm just trying to pay the guy. Give me a break. But, what are you going to do? You can lead a horse to water. Some of them bought some. Funny thing is, I was talking to my accountant, he was one who bought some, and he was, last year, he got into a big amount of strife with a client of his. He got sued over something that had nothing to do with him, but he ended up being able to settle his entire lawsuit by selling a Bitcoin. So it's like, dude, that helped you out. It's like basically Bitcoin has been the savior of every single thing. And I'm trying to tell my friends about this thing. And then meanwhile they're going, no, we got this. We got this. We're just investing in the S&P. And I go, well, how did that work out for you, right? I mean, you're getting taxed out of control. Your money's worthless. The inflation's killing you. Meanwhile, I'm telling you to buy this thing and it's worth $100,000. I mean, can't you see the insanity that continuing to do what you're doing isn't going to work? But, if they don't understand that, they don't trust it. So that brings me to today, and that's kind of out of order.
Holy smokes. Number 16, Myles, is now the guest with the lowest price point on the show. Before you, it was, I believe, number 11, Aisha, with $200 per Bitcoin. Myles is over here at $7 a Bitcoin.
Real. And also had the wherewithal to put the pieces together and realize where this thing was going. And it sounds like hodl from a pretty early point in time.
Yeah. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's not so much about what the money's worth, it's what it buys you. Like, what do you actually get out of it? And it's been really good to me. It got me out of my mortgage. I paid the house off. It got me to buy a compound on paper of land in Mexico, and I'm now building what apparently is the largest private recording studio in Latin America, like that, and a big house of a property, and these sorts of things I couldn't imagine that I'd be able to do. I just thought I was just Myles, the nerd programmer with a bit of an ability to make people sound good with this mixing. That was it. I never really thought everything was serious, but the one thing I sort of learned about myself over the years was that I have this uncanny ability to sense BS and sense the essence of something. And it wasn't until maybe I got into my 50s or maybe my late 40s that I started to realize that I should trust my gut. And if you feel that something's wrong, don't do that. And if you feel like you stumbled upon something that's right, even if everybody else is out there telling you it's wrong, trust your gut. And maybe that pays off. Maybe it doesn't. Look, one of the venture capitalists invest in 10 things and maybe one of them pays off and the rest are tax write-offs. But if you're not there to try 10 different things, you never get to the one. Maybe you roll the dice and then number one's the first thing to get. Maybe it's the fifth. Maybe it's the 10th. I don't know. But when you eventually have enough life experience that you can say, I smell BS here, then you're going to trust it. And the bottom line, and I think you guys are probably seeing this as well, is that the world out there is hypnotized to think that money printing in a Ponzi scheme like we've got and living in a debt encrusted country is in any way sustainable, let alone isn't going to collapse into a burning heap. And I think we all know deep down it will. It's just a question of when. We're all dancing around hoping that, when the music stops, we're going to chair. But there ain't that many chairs there. And that's part of the reason why my wife and I bought a compound in Mexico, because we just felt like I want to be outside of the blast range when this thing goes down. All paid for vehicle.
It sounds like you spent decades, and I think you said working to try to earn a crust, which sounds Australian for trying to get some amount of money, right? Just trying to get a financial foothold, right?
Yeah, just not to become a victim to the system and, become living paycheck to paycheck. And the stuff most people deal with.
I think almost everyone out there, just your regular everyday person, whether they're here in this nation state or another one, personally, I spent not decades, but a good 10 to 15 years climbing the corporate ladder of sales. And no matter how much I increased my base salary, even transitioning to cybersecurity sales where you make a nice base salary, I still never had any money. And it made me feel like, am I building my financial house on top of nation state quicksand?
Yeah. It's a setup, and unfortunately, everybody out there from a very early age is part of this setup, and it's not fair. It begins at the age of 18 when some kid is sitting down at the kitchen table with their parents, and somebody shoves a debt contract in front of them for a student loan, and they find at the age of 50 they're barely able to pay it off. Then, it happens with mortgages where you put on a 30-year, mortgage contracts that you pay thinking that that's the right thing to do for your family and to provide security and whatever, only to realize that the word mortgage, the direct French translation of that, is debt contract. And the banks know it. And then also, I mean, it's kind of bizarre, and I'll probably get myself in trouble saying this, but if you think about the recent fires that we've had in Los Angeles, and I've got personal friends that lost everything, and it's horrible. But if I look at the way that they've been building houses, particularly on the west coast of it, maybe left in Mississippi, you're in this situation where the houses are built with sticks and drywall and a bit of stucco, and you think that's not going to burn if a fire comes. They don't build them with concrete and brick, because there's no incentive to build a house that's going to last more than the mortgage contract. So if a 30-year mortgage contract was the deal, the house is designed to last 30 years. The same way that you buy a car these days and they put you on a 4 or 5 or 6-year financing year. And what's the life expectancy of the car? 4, 5, 6 years. It's built that way. You're built to be on perpetual debt. And the problem is that the only way to service that debt is to go and get a job like you did and you try to earn enough money to be ahead of it, and then realize that when you are ahead of it, they're going to tax you for every dollar you're ahead as much as possible. And then by the time, if you can get really ahead of it, you might be able to sock some money away, but you end up putting it away in the markets, and then watch the markets go down to nothing when when the economy burns. And so, what do you do? What do people do? I feel very sorry for them. I just think you've got to, at some point, you've just got to get out. You just got to save yourself. And where do you go? I don't know. You can't do the Francis thing and buy an island and like that. I'd love to. No, can't do that one. So, for us, we decided to find Mexico. And the weird thing about it was that particular economy is very different in the US. See, in the US, everything's about debt. It's about using the bank to give you money that you haven't earned yet, to sell your future out so that you can earn payments to pay said bank with interest. So everything you buy ends up costing you 5 times more than it's really worth, and 4 for 5 times goes straight to the bankster. And they get a lovely little passive income stream, and you're out there schlepping on a treadmill all day. I mean, that's not right. That's not human. It's not good. Everyone gets stressed out. Everyone starts taking it out on their friends and yell at somebody and road rage and everything else. And then they look at the TV set and tell them, oh, it's that politician's fault. It's got nothing to do with the politician. It's got to do with the whole system. It's set up so you're in debt from the early ages. What breaks that? What breaks that is solid money, hard money, real money. It used to be gold. Well, that went away in 71. Now we've got a digital version of that. We've got Bitcoin. Do you think that makes the bankers scared to death? Because all of a sudden, everything's traded not on their debt, but on an actual currency that's limited in supply. They can print money till the cows come home. The more they do, the less our money is worth it. We all talk about inflation and the cost of buying eggs. I mean, come on, you knew this was going to happen. Like, they've been printing money since, 1920, and just, with abandon, and you think your money's not worth anything? Well, that's what's going on. And of course, COVID, they went ballistic on printing money. Now we're going to pay that. And we're all sitting there going, yeah, inflation. Like, hello? No. You need a sound money supply that isn't going to get diluted. We need something with a limited supply, something with 21 million of them, and that would be Bitcoin. And then at the end of the day, while everybody else is losing their shirt buying eggs at the grocery store, you're sitting there going, hey, I bought this thing for $7. It's worth 100 grand. Right? It's not like, it doesn't take a rocket. So I've got no PhD in making money. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like everybody else. But I smelt it out, I felt it. I was like, this is BS. I'm not going to sit there and just become a victim to this.
So walk us through your journey to find Bitcoin. Once you picked your head up from working for several decades, from being in technology, from working in what sounds like the music or recording space until Napster, rugged you. What kind of journey did you go on? Did you look first to real estate and then to financial products like stocks, bonds, treasuries, and then finally to Bitcoin? Or, were you jumping on learning about hash cash or other prototypical forms of digital money? What was your journey like there to go from, hey, I'm working for something that is designed to prevent me from getting ahead, to, oh man, Bitcoin is the answer?
Yeah, I got a funny story about that. Okay, so in the 2000s, before the 2008 crash, you're right, I'll go back a few years. So we had moved to the States from Australia. I actually originally moved here in 89 and then went back for about 4 years back to Australia. When I came back, I tried to get my work back into Hollywood again, back into the recording industry, and then Napster and the budgets were all gone and there was no one selling money. So I had to go back into software, which is fine. I get that. But in the process of doing it, it was, it's a stressful world. You're sitting in front of the damn computer all day, not that in the recording studio, you're the windowless box sitting in front of the computer, but at least she has a feeling like you're in touch with human expression and art. In software, that doesn't exist, right? You're writing code, and people who pay you to write code are usually, corporations and businesses that have no real interest in your personal expression. They just want you to process their invoices fast or whatever. So when they pay well for that, until they know that they pay well. And, I kind of wrote down that world, but in this kind of lifeless software world that I found myself in, I discovered maybe I want some sort of a break from this, something to counter it. And I didn't, I decided to get into gaming, of all things, video games. Now, fuck, that's a good word, but I started finding these like massively online role-playing games, the MMORPGs, like World of Warcraft and stuff like that. So I'd spent time playing this stuff, and I enjoyed it. And then I started realizing the amount of time invested going in there trying to, craft a weapon or root chess or whatever it was just, I just didn't have that much. So I had to get back to work. So what ended up happening is you discover that you're in these games and these people pop up out of nowhere with their little NPC or their little character pops up their avatar. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Do you want to buy a sword or a shield or whatever? And you're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't want to have to sit there for days trying to farm this stuff. I mean, yeah, well, what do you want? He goes, I don't know, 10,000 gold or whatever it was. And I thought, sure. And then you start realizing, well, in order for me to get that sort of money, I've got to go farm it. That's just ridiculous. And then all of a sudden inside of this world, you start getting people who pop up and go, send me $50 and I'll send you $500,000. And you're like, what a novel idea. Virtual currency for real currency. That's interesting. And so that kind of got me thinking, like, what do we value? Do we value our time? Because we have a finite amount of that. And if you're going to sit in these games like, farming weapons all the time, is that a good use of your time since you really have one life? Or can you pay this schmuck, some money and you have it all for you? And then you start finding that there are people, like in China, for example, that have teams of people, and all they do is they sit there, play the game, and farm with weapons, and then they sell them. And then you get to the point of saying, well, this is all great, but do I trust them? And if I'm going to send money to somebody, how do I know that it's going to get to them? And there's like an escrow process. Like, you're going to give me the weapon that I'm going to give you the money for, right? Like, I can't physically see what you're giving me, so we have to find a way to do this, and it's where companies that popped up, like NTBot and others, that would do escrow transactions, and they became basically exchanges like Coinbase. That they're the effective version of that. I watched this kind of. I realized that it all started when I started realizing that I could buy a computer from Dell, and I never had to physically walk into a store and touch the machine. Like, I had to trust that they would give me a real good machine and that peer reviews matter, what other people said about it. But if I could make that leap of faith, then I would send money to them and at my doorstep a new laptop. And once I started realizing that people were willing to do that, I started seeing a change in our brain.
Yeah, it's almost like video gaming and then online shopping was your test of the digital transaction, almost like Indiana Jones throwing sand on the invisible bridge there, I think in Last Crusade, where you're kind of like testing a little bit, like, can I rely on this? Like, can I send you real world money for either gold or rare items in World of Warcraft, or can I send Dell some cash online and trust them to ship me a laptop that isn't going to be a limit? So after you realize that digital transactions do work, what happened next?
I guess I wanted to experiment a bit with it. I wanted to create like a laboratory environment around this. I started to, one of my software projects was dealing with merchant banking and and then things like the e-commerce and taking credit cards. And I watched the level of, the, I guess, like I mentioned, the trolls on the bridge between the person who wants to spend money and the vendor who wants to receive it. And it was awkward. I mean, it was just this like prehistoric thing that didn't fit the internet. It was like, okay, well, having been somebody who's been involved with computers since the late 70s, I would have thought by now we'd had a commerce system that would support the way that people live, right? If we're living online, you and I, we're talking, we're in different parts of the country and we're talking on the internet. And this isn't, I mean, it's special, right? But it's not as special as it was 10 years ago. And the fact is we've gotten used to it. It's become an appliance. Well, and money hasn't changed. I mean, if you saw what you have to do with like a merchant credit card transaction to get it to the vendor, it's just it's just the most archaic, stupid system that doesn't work for anyone. And you've got a poor vendor trying to sell you a pair of shoes, having to pay Visa 3%. Oh, you have Visa and all the intermediate shoes. Then you've got you spending somebody else's money because it's not your money unless you're using a debit card. It's somebody else's. So they're charging you interest on the use of somebody else's money. You don't need that. You know, it used to be I'd walk into the store with cash in a bind, walk out with my shoes, but I can't physically be present when they're all over the place. So in the end, we have to find a way that we can have a trustworthy way of changing money so that I'm not giving you counterfeit money and that you know that that money isn't already spent somewhere else. We don't have this double spend problem. And cryptography answers that question. Blockchains answer the question. And mathematically, nobody can dispute the efficacy of this. Just as, and if you look at the way that the fiscal world works in, say, banking, you've got this lowest possible layer of actual money. And then you build on top of that payment layers like Visas and MasterCard that are payment layer on top of the settlement process. In the same way that, what is it? God, I can't spit now. The one El Salvador is using for doing their transactions on top of Bitcoin. It's not a Bitcoin, the Bitcoin for.
Well, they had like almost like a state-run wallet for a little while, but maybe you're thinking about like a Lightning layer.
Yeah, Lightning. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, Lightning. Yeah, like a layer, like a layer 2.
Right. So. Yeah, like that side chain that comes off and lets you do a lot of transactions before you push it back to the blockchain.
Exactly. And that's the same way these are must-have work. You don't get settlement for like 72 hours. But every month they're going to take back their cut and the poor vendor, all they want to do is send you a pair of shoes. Sell you a pair of shoes. So nothing makes any sense. And then you go to another country. This is weird. Go to Mexico. There's no mortgages in Mexico. If you buy land, you pay cash. You buy a house, you pay cash.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No mortgages. And so when you go down, people go through some of the towns and they'd say, oh, it's like a third world country. Built buildings there, and it's a wind bar sticking out of exposed brick, and everyone's running around, eating tacos or whatever. And you start realizing they're the happiest people you ever meet in your life. And the fact that the reason why their building was half built is because they went and they made tacos and they'd sold them to the village and made their money and they bought bricks and they did a layer of this and now they ran out of money. They stopped and they went back and they sold more tacos and they go back and this process might take them 20 years and you're looking at a work in progress. And then one day when they finish that building and they've got this house, they'll die and they'll give it to their kids. And it's in the family. And this is what happens from generational. That's the way that world works. And when you look at the vast population on planet Earth, that's the way most of them work. They don't have mortgages. They don't have debt. We have debt in America because we're willing to forego our future in order to get nice things today. So even though we haven't actually earned them yet, I'm not saying that you haven't earned them because you're a bad person. I'm saying that you just you don't pay cash for that beautiful McMansion you've got because No one's got that sort of money. Well, you just go and put money down and hope you can service a mortgage for 30 years. Um, that's not normal. In the vast majority of people living on planet Earth, that's not how they work. They pay cash, and if they had something, it's passed down generation to generation.
So that's just so fascinating, by the way. I would have never thought in a million years that Mexico did not operate with mortgages. I mean, to your point, I mean, it's just today on the chat here with you, Myles, that the phrase student loan now sounds weird and quasi predatory.
It is. It is.
It seems as normal as can be. It's a student loan. It's like, well, dang, you got a student loan, you got a home loan, you got
Car loan.
a car loan. I mean, does anyone own anything in this nation state? And the answer is yeah, oftentimes no. So once you saw that you were on financial quicksand, you became acquainted with digital transactions, you took a deeper look and realized that all the systems and the layers and the abstraction and the third parties and the fees and the processors and these trolls on the bridge were making it a really messy situation. How did you land on Bitcoin? How did you find these cypherpunks?
I guess in my world of software development, cryptography is a big part of it. And you have to look back to when they used, I think, in the 90s, when cryptography was a weapon. The Department of Defense classed it that way. And I've also always lived in this world where I've had a very strong association with open source. I like the idea of people doing things because they're passionate about what they do. Maybe that's part of really in the music world. Musicians don't make much money, and Spotify pays them nothing. So trying to run a recording studio is like being philanthropy charity these days, because very few people can afford to pay for the use of all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. But you end up looking at it and go, what's really important in life? What's the human experience really all about? It's about expression. And when you think about, somebody in their deathbed, are they going to want to be looking back at their life going, well, I wish I spent more time at the office? No. You're going to be looking at their family and their artistic achievements and what they value. And you start realizing that maybe if you supported that, if you could, that's a good thing. And then I go back to this whole open source model, and I look at my experience working with Linux and all these open source technologies and realize, well, anybody who charitably donated their time to build the internet. It wouldn't be an internet for Apache or Linux or PHP or whatever else. This all came out of somebody's goodwill. And we have to keep paying it forward, right? We have to keep doing that. How do we do that when you can't get time off work, when you can't, pay your mortgage and your rent because of all this debt? You can't be a good steward. It's just impossible. Now it's all about me, and entitlement, and I demand this, even though I happen to. But it's like this is not our community. It's not like monarchs. So yeah, I guess Bitcoin's part of that, right? Bitcoin. If you notice something when you start talking to Bitcoiners, if you look at the guys and say, well, Salvador, places like that, you start realizing that there's a goodness in that community. Yeah, there are dicks, there are rug pullers, there are people out there that you wanted to beat the crap out of. Yes, like serious. There are also those people on Wall Street, and they're in political power, and they're in your local neighbor, like the Karens, whatever you want to call them. That's humanity, right? You don't need that. Well, for the vast majority of people in the Bitcoin space, these are good people. They're good people not because they think of Bitcoin as being a greedy thing, especially in the older Bitcoin community. They see Bitcoin as an empowering tool. They see Bitcoin as a way that the entire planet can rally around something that they can all agree on. And they also see Bitcoin as a way that they can give back, because if this money is just sort of falling from the sky as they took a punt on something years ago, well, it empowers them to be able to help through school or, put a kid through education, college, or feed a family that's dying or put somebody out in medical care or something. I mean, these are important things. That's how we have a community and a society and a species going forward. We have to give back. It's a big part of what I do, and it's a big part about what most of my friends who bought Bitcoin in the early days do as well. But those that are in it for themselves and greedy and all that, it's like, well, when you've actually got money, you might change your attitude.
So, and I'm actually remembering that you talked about, and I guess maybe I should stop and say we feel the same way in terms of Bitcoin being an empowering thing. Of course, when I got started this time last year, all I wanted was for my little allowance money to go to the moon so that I could get tattoos all over my body without my wife saying I could spend that money.
Okay.
But the more I learned about Bitcoin, the more I realized this is a global currency that anyone can use to transact directly with one another, and no one has to give us any permission for that. And it's a deflationary thing that actually rewards me for working hard and saving. It's a hard alternative to this debt fueled world, right? So we feel the same way about Bitcoin as a tool of empowerment and not really a tool of greed or a tool of I want to get super rich, right? I mean, of course, I want my Bitcoin to go to the moon so that I can go get the acre right next to yours in Mexico, and we'll make a Sat Chat studio there. But I told my wife I'll be happy if I can just buy the same thing tomorrow that I can buy today for the same amount. I just want to build my house on a firm foundation instead of quicksand supplied to us by our friendly local nation state. So I saw that I remember now that you said that you were first, I think it was almost like your colleagues in software who turned you on to Bitcoin at a time when you were having trouble paying your teammate or your employee there in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And he also mentioned it as well. So that's how you landed on Bitcoin. But were you literally interacting on message boards with cypherpunks in that 2008 space? Truly.
They're leading prize for that, but yeah.
Wow. Would any of those, I mean, I guess they probably all have pseudonyms or what have you, but of course, today, maybe not the pre-coiners and the new satillionaires out there. And if you're liking the show so far, like and subscribe. Holy moly, this is an absolute journey through Bitcoin. Some of them, like Satoshi or Adam Back, they have a little bit of recognizability. You mentioned Julian Assange. Is there anyone else out there in the early days that would be recognizable in today's world?
There's probably a few people. Most of the people that I work with are more on the technical side of things. So those cryptographers, they don't tend to get a lot of spotlight on them. They don't really want a lot of spotlight on.
Yeah.
They looked at what the government had done to their peers before if they invented something that became a weapon, and they realized they don't want that. And I think that might be part of the reason why Satoshi went underground, because probably that was a common thing in cryptography and cypherpunks. You wanted to keep out of the spotlight. And if you want to see why you want to keep out of the spotlight, look at Julian's story. What they did to him. And it's wonderful to see that because, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I feel very sorry for what he had. I did. But what he did in the course of maybe a 20-year period, maybe 15, was to show us how the nation state really works. Because God forbid you shine a light of truth on something, that you then become cheap messenger type of it. And that every attempt, although some people did try to protect him, Ecuador during its political regime that allowed for that, they did that. The second that politics changed and the people ushered in a different political movement, then they pulled the rug out from under him and he's hauled off into a bus to prison. And then you sort of look at the whole thing in the way that the government portrays somebody like that in such a negative light. They look at all of his human flaws and they focus on that, and they don't focus on the fact that we've been killing innocent people in Iraq, and this guy shone a light on that, or we've been doing the same in Afghanistan. And do you remember that war that we said that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and he didn't? Do you remember like Arab Spring and all of the stuff that went down there? And this guy was not singularly responsible, but the glue that allowed the cyberpunks to put together the systems that exposed all that. And now look what they do when they make him, they make an example of him. Everybody else is going back into the shadows. And I think that when it came to Bitcoin, because it came out of that cyberpunk world, the natural, process is you don't want the spotlight shone on you, you run back into the shadows, and that's why Satoshi is undefined at this point.
So I'm dying to know about your early mining. You said you did mine some Bitcoin. Were you mining back in the first epoch when the reward for solving the block was 50 Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I remember I had was it 2008 or something, 2009. I remember I had like a spare Macintosh somewhere around the place, and I had I had a laptop and I saw Linux on it, and some guys on the Linux community were talking about Bitcoin and libbtc or whatever the libraries were Bitcoin, which I installed on here, and started realizing, with a command line interpreter that you could start to mine the blockchain. We had to download the blockchain to your machine, but those they didn't take very long. And then you'd be like getting new transactions as they came off the internet, and you'd be mining them and hoping that you solved it and pushing the solution back, and then hopefully getting a reward back in your wallet about it. And I remember I'd set up like an old laptop or something, and just let it go and let it run all night. Come up in the morning and, oh, look, this King Bitcoin or whatever it was, I don't remember. Oh, that's great. I'll put it in my wallet. Might be worth like $1. I could buy a cup of coffee. That was kind of how it was.
So was your old Mac that you set up to kind of, almost like a hobby mining type little experiment? Were you mining in a pool of miners where when you solve the block, maybe you don't get all 50 Bitcoin, or were you solo mining? And you would go, I mean, come on, y'all. Come on. If everybody is out there right now listening to this show, we're talking to Myles, who mined Bitcoin in the early days, would go to sleep and wake up to 50 Bitcoin in his pocket. And I'm talking about when Myles was mining that Bitcoin was worth, quote unquote, nothing. But Myles knew what he was working with. Yeah, now today a Bitcoin is worth $100,000. Y'all pull out your calculators and just do 50 times 100,000. I'm not even gonna do it on this show.
But Myles, like, could you have even fathomed back when you were mining in an at-home, hobby type of scenario, that two guys like us 12, 13, 14 years later would be sitting here just completely in awe of your story?
No, I couldn't. I mean, I was being blown away by new graphics cards and computers and what, ISP brought and stuff like that. That were the things that were amazing me. And just what you did on the computer was kind of like, you were at the train station, you were waiting for the next train to take you to the next train station. And you were just writing code. I go to coffee shops and just code. And And that was what I did. And I had to make, take the mobile. So I made money writing code and did the pay to do it. It's just that while I was doing it, I was always thinking about everybody else sitting around me and kind of looking at them and realizing they weren't happy. Or they were all, if they were happy, it's because they were on a mission. They were on a journey to achieve something in their life. And I thought, great, good for you. But most of them weren't doing that. And then I go into my clients and, particularly in the corporate world, they'd all try to make themselves happy around some achievement that they were doing, like some PowerPoint presentation or some meeting they've got, or they've got a, they're going to the annual sales conference in Orlando, or whatever it was. And, what would really make you happy is spending more time with your kids and maybe, go and watch them play soccer or something. I don't know, but that would probably make you really happy. But no, you're on the PowerPoint and thinking, they use all these acronyms to try to make it all sound like some language of the corporation and all of that. And I'm not going there as the black and white side, but that can be right something. What do you need? And in the back of my mind, going, are you people freaking insane? You don't need that. Just do this. But you can't say that because somebody built their career path on being the middle manager of that dysfunctional group until they get blown away. But that's the world, and you're the Mr. Reality, and it's like, don't be a downer. Don't come in and tell them they're all full of it. No, it is what it is. Just go back and realize the truth in the world as you see it, and just be comfortable to follow that. And that's kind of what I did with Bitcoin. Yeah.
Did you solve more than one block?
It was so long ago. I think so. I think I probably did. It wasn't really the golden mine for the sake of getting yield. It was more about understanding how the technology worked. I was more interested in looking at the blockchain and seeing it like it's this sort of open source database. And then realizing, what could we store in that, and why are people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for Oracle licenses on this? And then the open source world, So I'm looking at more as the mechanics of what was going on and less of the yield. It wasn't until that moment when MT Gox went ballistic and Bitcoin hit over $1,000 that all of a sudden the yield became more valuable. But at that time, now you couldn't mine it effectively. I did remember, I think when Ethereum first came out, I thought, this is interesting because this has got sort of applicational value. Like it could be used as I saw Bitcoin as kind of the world's hard drive, and I saw Ethereum as the world's CPU. And so I thought, well, maybe there's something in this. This had some legs. So I started mining Ethereum. But I also realized I did mine quite a bit of Ethereum back in the old graphics cards. Then I looked at my power bill. This hurts. And so back then, I think I was buying Ethereum at $6 each. So and this is funny. I was a host on a podcast. Oh, this is going way back, like 2016 or something. And all of there were three of us. And two of the other guys were like Bitcoin skeptics. And I'm like, no, you got to understand this thing. It's great. And like, oh. So this thing like Ethereum came around, and I was telling one of the guys, dude, I just bought, 100 Ethereum, $6 each. You got to do it. It's like, yeah, that thing's going nowhere, Yeah. And then, it didn't go nowhere. We could do $3,000-4,000 for Ethereum. It's like, you had your chance, right? It's like, I can lead you to water. But I talk to them about this, like, we'd all talk about these, day in the life experience. It's like, oh yeah, kids got to have new braces, or right. I had this problem. I ended the doctor and my insurance won't pay for it, so now I've got a bill of $50,000. All that sort of stuff. The day in the life, this is an Americana experience, right? Well done to it. We'd all talk about it like we were at a pub and a beer at the bar, going, yeah, it sucks to be you, man. Or everyone's wondering that and stuff. And I'm like, dude, here's the answer. Yeah, and I'm not saying that. There's a lot of shit coins out, right? I go back to Bitcoin because I believe it has general world acceptance. But I've also done okay with Ethereum. Now, is it to say that every other coin that pops up? No, there's a lot of rubs out there and there's a lot of scams. And there's no need for them. They don't have applicational value. But I do believe that Bitcoin could be a fundamental world reserve currency. And you can imagine if that happens, right? We're thinking about a market cap right now, which is trivial compared to what we're thinking. And there's been discussion about, a strategic reserve and all of that. But if the banksters would just get out of the way of humanity and allow humanity to solve its own problems, your $100,000 Bitcoin would be worth $100 million, right? They're artificially restricting it because it goes against their business ethos. And when you understand that 42% of the GDP of the United States goes to financial services, you start realizing that they're a big lobby power that will do everything in their way to stop Bitcoin from succeeding, or unless they can actually make a buck out of it. I mean, look at Jamie Dimon in his history. It's amazing to me to see that we've come to a point where we have an administration that is even willing to speak of Bitcoin. And so it's like, well, whatever. You look at countries like El Salvador and what they've done, and they've gone from a lawless murder state to hope and prosperity in a way that they can break through the, INF and become their own. I mean, they're going to be the Singapore of Latin America, no doubt. And, I'm so appreciative and grateful for what they have done because they're showing the rest of the world that, you don't have to live that. You can break free it. If Argentina did that, what would it do to the Bitcoin price? If Switzerland did that, if Japan did that, I mean, but all these banksters are stuck in the way trying to sell their Ponzi scheme and just extract a little bit more yield out of the interest rates that you and I are paying for the car and the student. So, yeah, it's a hard round.
So tell me a little bit more about how you think the traditional financial system and the banks are restricting I guess you might say the price of Bitcoin in dollar terms, but you might even be talking about just adoption of Bitcoin on the way to hyper Bitcoinization. What do you feel is going on there?
Well, if you go back in time and look at the history, it does tell the story. Back in the 1800s, before the Federal Reserve and so on, banks were vaults that stored gold. And if you live on the West Coast, or the Arizona where I am, California, Nevada, something like that, you understand the whole story of gold rush. And what he did, and the fact that banks were vaults, Fort Knox, that sort of thing. They were guys with guns, in a big ass safe and protecting your gold. The problem with those banks is that they often only existed to be able to take. There's no money for a bank if they just hold your capital because they can't. They're going to pay you to hold your money. Right? The only way they make money is to take your money and loan it out to somebody else. And that's why their interest rates that they pay you are far less than the interest rates they charge for the use of your money. But they own nothing, right? They're sitting in the middle, taking somebody else's deposit, loaning it to somebody else and making arbitrage. So the problem happened in the 1800s when there would be maybe in the newspaper or in the town square, people were concerned that a bank was going to go broke. And all of a sudden, you get this concept of a run on the banks. People would line up and try and take their money out. Well, the problem was that banks had loaned their money to somebody else. So the bank couldn't go and claw back the loan from the farmer who borrowed it to, buy the harvester or pay for labor or seed or whatever. They were stuck in the middle. So if there was a run on the bank would bust. Everybody lost their money. And this happened over and over and over again in the 1800s. The only way to give the banks security, and this particularly happened after World War I, or at least in the run-up to World War I was that you had to find a way that the government would stop this boom bust cycle of banks going broke being like a lender of last resort. So they created the Federal Reserve. Now, originally when they did that, they backed every dollar that they print with physical gold. So it got to the point where they needed so much physical gold, particularly as wars were going on, that they even enacted a law where humans or individuals could not hold gold bullion. And if you did, it was against the law and they come and compensate. That was in the 30s. But gold was what it was all about because they could issue against their gold holders. There was always a stopgap limit. And then when Vietnam War happened and they ran up so much debt in a war that could not be won, and they basically bailed on it forced the government under Nixon to say, well, we have to print money and create inflation in order to pay for the debt of all of these soldiers we sent to Vietnam to fight this war that probably didn't need to be fought in the first place. And what ended up happening? Well, we took us off the gold standard. We started printing money like a drunken sailor with no restriction. And shortly after that, price of oil went through the roof. Saudis, embargo, the inflation went crazy. And by about 1980, 81, inflation, your interest rate to get a mortgage on a house was 18, 20%. It was high because you put us up the gold standard, right? Did any of the presidents after Nixon put us back on the gold standard? No, because we'd started to run up debt, and the only way of doing that would be to force austerity upon people to generate more taxable wealth and have reduction in government services so that we would not have a deficit, we would have a surplus, and the surplus would then allow us to pay the debt off. Okay, that shit's coming on, right? We ain't ever, 35 trillion, we ain't ever cutting that back. And so now when I look at current, administration or economic policy and this whole concept of cutting back government services and adapting and increasing the tax burden on the individual by way of tariffing and by way of other forms, but you realize what they're trying to do is to get us out of the deficit and into a surplus. But the deficit is so deep because the interest rate on the debt is higher than the military budget, but we can't get ourselves out of that. And at some point, we're just fooling ourselves to get out of it. If every individual in the 330 million people in the United States had to actually pay the debt off, we'd all be on the hook for somewhere between, I think, $100,000 to $200,000 each. Do you think that the people going down to Food City and with their food stamps can afford that? So every person that does that, the people who don't, they're double in their, laboring, and they're more and continues to the point where at some point, what we do, right? We're living in this pretend land that this problem will never come, but we know it will. And it's just a matter of how long have we got to play this game before it becomes, accountable. So your Bitcoin, you can put it on a little ledger wallet or a little, offline wallet. So you can in your pocket, travel around the world, take your money, billions of them. It's fun. It amuses me, particularly going to Mexico all the time, that they talk about, these suitcases of cash that the cartels are getting across the border and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, really? They just put a ledger wallet in their pocket and walk across. And then just cash it out somewhere in South America, then that would be smart. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not advocating this, but the truth is that the world of money has changed and we haven't. And if we keep repeating the same problem over and over and over again, all we do is accelerate our demise. And so we have to at some point realize that day is coming. If I don't want to become a prophet of doom. I'm not trying to do that. And if you study demographics and you study things like the work of Neil Howe on the fourth Chernobyl, for example, you'll start realizing that, human lifespan of say 80 years has 4 individual quarters, and each has this repeating pattern. And so if you look at the human lifespan of 80 years going back, the nations, the billions of people, and you go back in time, you see repeating patterns. Going back to Napoleon, go back before that, but certain points in time, certain things happen. And you have these times of great wealth and great prosperity, and then renaissance, and eventually you get to the 4th cycle, and it's decline, demise, and chaos. And that's where we have right now. This is normal. This is a repeating factor. And the only way out of this mess is to make sure that you've got your stuff together, right? And that you've got a plan B, and you've got safe haven, safety nets. And the biggest economic safety net that you could have is Bitcoin. Absolutely. No one's going to steal it from you. And you can take it anywhere in the world and find an exchange and cash out. You'll be okay. But you can't do that with dollars. If the US dollar goes into hyperinflation like Venezuela or Zimbabwe or whatever, good luck trying to use that, get an Uber in Mexico City. It's not going to work. You need something portable. You need something safe. You need something where it adjusts automatically to inflation, and start measuring the value of things not in US dollars, but in Satoshis or Bitcoin. And then you'll start seeing the true value.
Okay. Oh my goodness. So the world of money has changed, but we haven't. Squadoosh.
Yeah.
You need money that can go anywhere and buy anything at any time, that automatically adjusts to inflation and, quite frankly, is deflationary. And start thinking about your life in terms of Bitcoin, not dollars. Because if you use Bitcoin as your unit, then you'll start to see the true value of things. And that couldn't be said any better, Myles. When I took a look at my home on a fiat standard, it looked like it was an amazing investment. When I looked at my home on a gold standard, it looked, didn't really do anything. When I looked at my home on a Bitcoin standard, you better believe I saw the true value of that home.
Yeah.
And the true value of that home was that it had a roof, doors, and windows. I mean, goodness gracious. So, and for the satillionaires who have whipped out their phone to do the math, 50 times 100,000 is $5 million. So your boy Myles went to sleep, and he did in fact wake up to $5 million. Oh my gosh. So once you went on this big journey to realize you were working for quicksand, you realized digital transactions work, you realize Bitcoin's a great way to get things done. You mine some Bitcoin till you can't really mine it anymore. Maybe the ASICs come online, start going hard. You're buying Bitcoin at that. Okay, we're done mining. We're just going to buy Bitcoin. You get to Mount Gox, right? You get to MT Gox. Used to be basically a place where people could talk about Magic the Gathering online, which is a collectible card game that I've played since at least 2007. A little bit in the 90s when I was a kid, had no idea what I was doing. But you have that fellow who turns Magic the Gathering online into MTGO exchange for Bitcoin, and it becomes, a lot of people just call it Mount Gox these days because you have the MT. You were using Mount Gox as your as the place to store your Bitcoin, and then you pulled it off just almost miraculously before that whole exchange self-imploded for doing effectively what the banks do, which is rehypothecate and or basically not have as much Bitcoin on their books as they said they did, right?
That's right. Yeah. It was luck. I mean, I can't take credit for it. I could have been wiped out, but not wiped out. What? I mean, it didn't cost much to live. But at the end of the day, that was luck, and that was just simply because I needed a way that my guy in Bangladesh could convert Bitcoin into his local currency, and we had to get back onto the banking system in order to do that. And this bank in Hong Kong, this exchange in Hong Kong.
Okay. And for our Satillionaires out there, Mount Gox went belly up for doing silly things. And the individuals who had their Bitcoin on this Japanese exchange that was admittedly run by, I think, a fellow from France, they basically, they didn't have that Bitcoin and they were out over time a significant amount of money and had to either hang in there and wait for people to find the Bitcoin. And it was redistributed, at least in part, last year. So if you can imagine waiting from 2000 and what, 9, 10, 11, 12, when Mt. Gox went under, waiting 12 years to get your Bitcoin back, the whole time it's going from whatever it cost back then up to $100,000 is just insane. Or they had to basically sell it to someone who could hang in there. Hey, I have 100 Bitcoin with Mt. Gox. I need money now. I'll sell you that for, let's say, $100,000. And when they finally find that Bitcoin, it'll go to you instead of to me. Can you imagine that?
Like a JG Wentworth type.
Yeah, kind of like a, hey, look, I need money now. I'll sell you my Bitcoin. You give me money now, and you get it later. So I guess my next question for you, and we're going to kind of get up to the present moment here where you decide to move to Mexico. But holy moly's, Myles' story is so insane. I feel like I'm mining a precious resource here myself. So I'm gonna keep swinging my pickaxe away here. You continue to buy Bitcoin by simply working a day job and putting whatever money you had into Bitcoin, I'm assuming. At what point did you reach a level of Bitcoin where you felt like you're done working and can do, you talk about being retired, at one point we're like, you know what? I'm not going to wake up and go into the fiat mines to develop more software and get paid in nation state paper. What year was that? What was that like?
I think probably 2017. There was a time when Bitcoin went to about 20 grand, I think. It was like a really amazing thing to see it be up. I did cash out some then, and I think that's okay. I mean, I didn't cash it all, but I took some. And the fun thing, funny thing, so I'm on this verge of retirement. I was like, well, I'm about to retire. I mean, I love doing things. I'm a very active person. But I also feel like maybe I, I didn't have a chance to really finish the music side of my life, but simply working in Hollywood. Dave Grohl wouldn't take my phone call, let alone let me work and stuff. And I had worked in studios for so long, I kind of gave it all up to get back into technology. And she goes, well, we've got a money. I mean, to build a studio. I thought, well, what? Where? In Mexico. And that's been my journey the last 3 years. I've been building what my architect tells me is the largest private recording studio in Latin America in the center of Mexico.
Wow.
And this is, I bring this story up because of the human angle on it. This is where somebody who works hard, did what the man told him to do, raise your family, put your kid through college, all the things they told you to do, and sacrificed the things that maybe you weren't passionate about because you thought that's what society tells you have to be, right? That's the essence of success in the middle class. And then all of a sudden, whenever you broke it, whenever you didn't do what society told you, like if the banks told you Bitcoin's a joke and it's a scam and you do it, you're like, yeah, screw you, or buy it or mine it or whatever. And then that worked out well. And then when society tells you you can't, make money in Hollywood and raise your families and take a day job and get that chapter up, sometimes you get a second chance. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter how old you are, but Bitcoin enables second chances. Well, because there are people out there would love to say maybe they want to make a film maker and they want to make a movie, but they can't get financing or they want to write a book. They haven't got time. They got that crappy job working customer service, that corporation over there. Bitcoin gives you the second chance, right? Maybe it's not Bitcoin, maybe it's the observance of opportunity. But if you don't trust your gut and you only listen to what everyone tells you to do, then you're going to be a pawn on their chessboard, right? And if you do trust your gut and you're observant and you realize that they're not teaching you to be observant in college, like that's a skill you learn on the street, and you're willing to go on the street and learn, well, can be your oyster. You just have to be willing to do the contrarian thing, basically the polar opposite of what everyone in society tells you. So, that's really the essence of my Bitcoin story.
That is such an amazing Bitcoin story, Myles. And like, it's just incredible that we here on Sat Chats and all the Satillionaires out there get to listen to your story. I mean, I listen to a lot of Bitcoin content, Myles, and there are many out there who are like Bitcoin, they're the usual suspects who are talking about Bitcoin and promoting Bitcoin. But here goes Myles. And Myles has a story that is as compelling as anyone else out there in the Bitcoin community. And who is telling Myles' story? Who gets to listen to Myles' story? Well, it's the folks right here on Sat Chat. So, I kind of want to recap our conversation here for everyone today. We talked about how you worked for decades to earn your crust, couldn't barely do it. You find that digital transactions work through MMORPGs and online shopping. You discover Bitcoin. And for those who just missed it, within 8 years, 2009, 2010 to 2017, you go from trying your hardest to earn a crust to financially good to go. We can lower that contract work to whatever level you see fit. We can kind of tail off on that work. We can give up that software world altogether because Bitcoin has fixed Myles's finances. Bitcoin fixed Myles's shoulder, and Bitcoin fixes Myles's career path and his passion for music. So it is it's unbelievable to hear. And I love this idea of Bitcoin giving you a second chance to go after what you really care about in life and focus on your time, focus on the quality of the life you're living. So when is your studio going to be finished? And if there's anyone out there who wants to record the next, great album, the next Foo Fighters second album in what might be ostensibly Latin America's largest private recording studio, how do they, when is it done? How do they find you?
Well, the best thing is stay tuned on our website, which is troubledclep.com. If you go to that, it's I'm not sure here, troubledclep.com. We will let everybody know through that website when the studio is online. The building is finished. The roof is on. We're just doing a bit on the inside now. I'm packing up all my gear here to put on a truck. If you saw the road cases in my garage, I look like it's Bon Jovi on a tour. Yeah, that stuff all goes on a truck down to Mexico in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we're looking at sometime mid-year to get everything up and running and going, and then it'll be fun. It's a wonderful opportunity to embrace the past in terms of music and the future as well, and to bring something to a country which they haven't been able to go to Hollywood like I did, and I want to bring a bit of Hollywood to them. So, and it's a beautiful part of the world too, and the top is great.
Oh yeah.
So that's troubledclef.com. Is that TROUBLEDCLEF.com?
Yes, sir.
All right. So all the Satillionaires out there who are interested in music and want to follow along, they can watch Myles do his thing on troubledclef.com. So much from this episode has been incredible. One thing that we do, Myles, is we ask all our guests to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. And for you, we didn't even really get into the reasons why, despite America's celebration of success, you're still packing up and heading to Mexico. So would you be willing to come back on in 9 months? Maybe let us know how the studio is going, what that was like, and come back on the show?
Absolutely. I can probably do it from the studio. So yeah, I can show you what you can do with some Bitcoin.
Now, we're gonna make you an offer here in a second, but the first thing that we want to do is ask whether or not you're gonna go out to your local grocer there in Scottsdale, pick up some Ithaca hummus for the drive.
Oh yeah, I love hummus for sure.
Well, I mean, this seems almost insignificant after such a, I mean, just truly beautiful conversation, Myles. I want to first really sincerely thank you for taking the time to share your story with us and with our audience.
Oh no, it's an honor for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. This is the point of the show where we typically, for in-studio guests, we break out the hummus and we have them try. Ithaca Hummus is our corporate sponsor and has enabled us to get this thing up and running. But since you are not here with us, you're in Scottsdale
Right now, yeah.
Yeah. So where can he pick up some jalapeno lime Ithaca hummus for the drive down to Mexico?
Yeah, you could go to Whole Foods or Sprout.
Okay, yeah.
Go to Safeway, Albertsons. You could go to AJ's.
So check that out when you're able, and tell all your friends and family. Let's hit Myles with his offer.
All right, Myles. So in standard Bitcoin ethos, we believe in value for value. And you've been gracious enough to share your time with us today. And so in exchange for that, we'd like to make you an offer.
Okay.
The offer is $50 US, 50 USD. And I'm going to ask Stuart to just kind of like,
I'm not touching that.
Oh, that's right. You go ahead. Tell us about that for a second.
Yeah.
Stuart.
So we've got your favorite president, Ulysses S. Grant, featured prominently on this Federal Reserve note, aka a big old nation state we owe you, or
$50 worth of sats, which if we look at the price of a single Bitcoin right now on the Clark Moody dashboard,
it ain't $7.
No, it's $99,420 right now, which translates to 1,006 sats per dollar.
Okay.
I can't do that in my head. Myles probably can, but times 50 is 50,300 sats or $50.
So you got $50 that'll likely buy you $20 worth of stuff later, or 50,300 sats that will likely buy you more than $50 worth of stuff later. Which one would you like, Myles?
Well, it's no question. It's the sats. I mean, the problem is that if I was to somehow take that $50, because we're not in the same room, by the time you would get it to me, I'd be lucky to see half of it. It would all be chewed up by fees and transfer costs. And then when I got it, the inflation rate was already eroded half of it as well. So, no, big question. The sats.
That's a melting ice cube right there, and we don't want to send that to you. It'll go puddle by the time it gets to you. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. So my guy, Myles, you chose the sats. So Myles is number 16 on the show. That brings our record of sats versus dollars to 15-1. 15 guests have chosen Sats. Only one has chosen the cash so far. So,
Something else.
It was number 9,
Paul. So, but he did take the cash, Myles, and we're really glad you took the Sats. So, really good luck with your trip down to Mexico. We can't wait to bring you back on the show for your Bitcoin baby update. Everybody out there, head to troubledclef.com to follow along. That's trouble like double trouble, TROUBLED, clef, CLEF.com. For everyone that made it this far in the video, number one, your life has changed and you can't wait to adopt a Bitcoin standard and be done running the fiat rat race 8 to 9 years from now. 2034, y'all could be done if you're listening to this episode right now. So smash the like and subscribe on Sat Chats to show us that you want to be done working the fiat mines by 2034. Every time you do, a brand new Bitcoiner gets his laser eyes. This has been such an incredible episode. And I want to remind everyone that we are on a race to get to 999 plus 1 subscribers on the channel so that we can unlock a live show Friday mornings at 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll all jump on and we will chat about Sats live. Number 9, Paul's going to be in the chat clowning on his fiat. Myles is going to be joining the chat from his largest private recording studio in Latin America. He's going to be dropping the sauce on us, absolutely sending pure signal.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a great time for everyone. So please help us get there. Share it with your family and friends. Do everything you can to become a Satillionaire and help your friends and families become Satillionaires as well.
Let's go.
Until next time, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own, but I'll just tell you real quick, Myles' views are on fire, and you might want to think about making his views your views. Thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.